Weird.
Yeah, hopefully my microphone's off. Can anybody hear me on there?
What?
I can hear you, Carl.
Hey Eric,
Hey,
I'm taking my son to basketball practice right now. I'm gonna be on here, but I gotta figure out how to mute it. But I want to be informed on here. Let's see here. And just call me. Hold on.
Unbelievable. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. I was like,
Bobblehead.
Recording in progress.
Always. All right, I'm going to go ahead and reconvene the city council meeting. This is City Council Trinidad, California, not Colorado, January 13th, 2026. And we are returning from closed session. We have nothing to report. And so let's start, please, with the flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. First item tonight is the approval of tonight's agenda. I'll go to the council and see if there are any changes or things you'd like to move around. Okay. Members of the public, any comments or questions about tonight's agenda? Any changes you'd like to see? All right, I'll bring it back to the council for approval of tonight's agenda.
I'll move that we approve the agenda.
Thank you.
I'll second.
Okay, seconded by Jack. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so moved. The next item is minutes from the November 12th, 2025 meeting. So council, any questions or comments or edits for those agenda, or excuse me, minutes? All right, I have none either. Members of the public, any changes to the minutes from November 12th? Okay, bringing it back to the council then. For a motion. I'll go ahead and start this one. I'll move to approve the minutes from November 12th, 2025. A second. Okay, a second by Councilor Breckenridge. All those in favor? Aye. Aye. So moved. All right, then we're going to move on to council reports and committee assignments. So I'll start, I guess, at that end of the table with our newest council members.
I don't have anything to report as of yet, but thank you.
That's great.
Yeah,
Dax, do you have anything?
I have nothing to report as well.
Okay, then I'll go to Katie.
I didn't have the notes with me for the last time the council met, and I said that I would report this time. So the primary thing that the Redwood Regional Economic Development Commission, REDEC, it was they had a program with every monthly meeting. They do have some kind of program, and this was about Redwood Region Rise, which it's a committee that invests in regional economic resilience projects, and they had kind of a competition going for small businesses to apply for their funds, and 13 awarded projects working to increase food security, housing. So
anything in Trinidad, or did they say?
No, nothing that I picked up on that had to do with Trinidad. And the latter part of the meeting is each area, each town supervisor. There's a supervisor there as well. We all talk about what's been going on in our town. I don't think I need to what I said, but
Okay.
I did say that Trinidad was on the map.
Okay, thank you. Anything else,
No,
Katie? Okay.
no, and John will be taking on the REDAC in January. I believe there's a meeting.
Yes, at the end of the month, yes.
Bryce, did you have anything?
Yes, I attended the December 18th, 2025 meeting of HCOG, behalf of the city, and we had an interesting presentation from someone from the Transportation Commission about the coming thing over the next few years. The legislature is going to be looking for ways to possibly adopt a pay-as-you-go system for the use of our roads, because historically the gas tax has funded a lot of the maintenance and so road system. Now that that's going down with electric vehicles going up, the state's not getting so much revenue to run things. They're looking at possible track of the mileage that you drive, and then assessing the charge based on being over the next few years. The legislature is going to be looking for various systems of that nature. Then we amended our overall work program budget for it, in more or less a housekeeping. As it relates to Trinidad, we approved our what's called the RENAT allocation, which is the housing needs assessment that county has to go through every 10 years, I think. We have the board ended up endorsing not the staff's recommended version, but a slight variation on that put more emphasis on one of the other factors of the many that are that analysis. For Trinidad's purposes, method that was selected requires us to build 3 housing units for acutely low-income persons, 4 units for extremely low persons, 3 for very low-income persons, 5 for low-income persons, 2 for moderate persons, and 10 for above moderate income person, for a total of 27. So under both scenarios, we're expected to build 27,000 units for the next cycle, which I believe is 7 years. State is very optimistic about what every jurisdiction can do. For Humboldt County is almost 6,000, 5,962. That could be big. Yeah, so places like your, obviously, are expected to take a lot more of that. So Trinidad, so that's my report for each month.
I have a comment about the electric vehicles. Did they discuss at all getting tax revenue from the electricity providers? Because EVs don't go to gas stations, but they do plug into, the RCEA, for example, takes.
Yeah, they appear to be more interested in number of miles driven on the road than anything. It's controversial because people that are buying, they well, why should we have to pay?
And they are, we're paying a lot for electricity now. So,
But and also the DMV fees are much higher for EVs than they are for gas cars, and that's how they would recoup that cost.
See, I
Yeah.
didn't know that.
Which is a lot. So it's a lot easier to do that than a mileage tracker vehicle.
Right.
It's gonna be
I guess the 27 housing units. So I guess we need to let Trevor's probably aware of this. The planning commission. Yeah. Okay. Just making sure we do that handshake. Okay, I just have really quick. We had a city select meeting yesterday and appointed Kimberly White, the new mayor of Arcata, to the LAFCO board of directors. She'll be the other representative now. And then I attended the HMRA, that's the Hazardous Materials Response Authority meeting yesterday. It was kind of fun. I actually went to the Eureka Fire Station for the meeting since I was in town. So that was kind of fun. And we just, in that meeting, it was just reviewing all the training activities that have been held the past year. And they do training, hazardous materials training for volunteer fire departments. So we chatted a little bit about that to make sure that, our folks would be trained as well. So and that was it. So any other questions regarding these committee reports from the council? All right, any questions from members of the public about the committees? Yes, Ms. Flashner.
Right, so 27 units are expected in the city of Trinidad. This is the greater Trinidad.
Yes, this is in the city.
City.
Yes.
Oh, that will be interesting. Yes, thank you.
Okay, with that, then we'll move on to the public safety report. Gabe, I'll turn it over to you. I know we have Lieutenant McCall this evening as well, so what works.
We do have Lieutenant McCall on attending the meeting, and I'll turn this one over to him. We got stats, I believe, in the meeting packet for November and December. And all the stats and the analysis that I do each month, when I look at the stats, they generally are 3-to-1 calls inside, outside city limits. And city limits being 3, should cities 1. And it was a pretty short list. So November and December seemed to have a low call volume, and I'll let Lieutenant McCall speak to that.
All right. Good evening. Thank you. Yeah, that's correct. I was just looking at the Trinidad proper stats. So those numbers for inside Trinidad. I'm glad you have the greater area packets, it sounds like. When I went to look at that just now, I wasn't sure. We've been having some off and on glitches with that system, and the other stats for the other areas up north appeared to be the correct months, but the months listed for Trinidad were not the correct months. So I wasn't sure if they had somehow, the update hadn't gotten in there, or if the months just reverted. So but based on the numbers you're saying for that, that sounds about right, because I think I was looking at a roughly 110 or something like that calls for service, and I might be mixing up which month that was. But looking at the calls within the city itself, yeah, we had 53 for the month of December, which was exactly dead even with the numbers I show for the calls within the city in November as well, because those ones were also at 53 for the month of November. So no change in the quantity of calls there. Obviously, the numbers of the types of calls, switched around a little bit. Majority of those calls, out of those 53 calls, 26 of those were patrol checks or Trinidad patrols. So Trinidad patrols generally are going to be a deputy coding it or dispatch coding it as doing just a routine kind of patrol of the Trinidad area in our CAD RIM system. One of the codings for that would be TPAT or Trinidad Patrol. So these other patrol checks could potentially also just be routine patrols of the area. They just weren't coded that way, or they could be patrol checks related to, low-level calls where we patrol check for something or patrol check the area. So, but those made up almost, roughly half of the calls for the month of December. They may add 7 calls that were transferred to other agencies. So that would be things like transfers to fire and medical, 3 dispatch reports. Those would be things that would be a CAD documentation only, likely non-criminal or not requiring any kind of response. Somebody just wants it basically on record that they were calling something in. And a couple of general disturbances, a couple of welfare checks for the month of December, and then one each of a slew of different things, from a 911 hang up, 1 abandoned vehicle, 1 alarm, 1 beach patrol, 1 counterfeit report, a follow-up, a singular fraud, a singular grand theft, a traffic stop, vehicle investigation, a vehicle repossession. Those get called into us whenever somebody's doing a repossession. They call in for the responsible law enforcement jurisdiction, so that if somebody calls in their cars being stolen, we know that it's probably not the case. It's a repossession occurring. So that was it for that. Nothing that's come across my desk as far as any glaring issues or concerns in Trinidad, or even the neighboring areas there outside of the city that I'm aware of. So uneventful, it appears from my end of things, which is a good thing. And so unless somebody has any other specific issues or concerns that they would like to bring up that can either expound upon or look into, that's pretty much what I have for the month of December.
Right, thank you. Any questions for Lieutenant McCall? I just had one quick one, but it unfortunately goes back to November. So there was a type of call, 380 View Avenue, shot SH, which I assume is like shots heard. Is that?
Yeah, so shots SH is shots heard. So typically, yeah, so if you hear a shots SH is shots heard versus a shots fired, which would be shots F, I believe, on there. So more often than not, it's not necessarily a gunshot. Anything that comes in that sounds like a gunshot. So obviously we get a lot, especially during New Year's or around 4th of July and that type of stuff. So it could be anything that was a loud bang. It could be a backfire. It could be anything like that would potentially sounds like a gunshot, and we'll investigate it obviously as such until we, determine otherwise or are unable to determine the source. But yeah, that's what it would be.
Okay, all right. great.
Whereas if somebody called in and said, hey, I'm looking at my neighbor right now and they're outside, they're on their porch shooting off a pistol, that would typically get as a shots fired because we know that it's somebody firing a gun versus just a sound that sounded like a possible gunshot.
Oh, okay, thank you. Yeah, I hadn't seen that acronym before, so it caught my eye. Thank you for that explanation. That makes sense. Any questions from members of the public for Lieutenant McCall? All right, I think everything is super clear. Gabe?
Yeah, I don't have any questions. I just want to take this opportunity every time we get Lieutenant McCall come to our meetings. I want to take the opportunity to just thank him. I feel like every time I turn around, maybe it's a different perception. Everyone in town has a different perception, but between our Pacific Coast Security team and the sheriff's deputies themselves, I feel like they're there. They're there when I'm not looking, and I turn around and let them through town. And I appreciate Josh and his response. He's always there if I have questions. He's very accessible, and I know he's a really busy person. But Josh, I want to say thanks for that and what you do for Trinidad. But also put a good word in for Pacific Coast Security. I think it's a testament right now what this council has done in the last couple of years to implement this service. I hear a lot of good feedback from a good lady myself. When you hear this.
Excellent. Yeah, I echo that. Thank you very much, Lieutenant McCall. We really appreciate you.
Oh, thank you. It's always good to hear. I think we all do our best, but I definitely do my best to be, responsive and timely. And it likewise goes both ways. I appreciate Gabe's always there and accessible when I need something, and it goes both ways. So it's a good thing. So know that the appreciation is not just one way.
Thank you. All right, well, we'll let you go back to protecting and defending, I guess. Thank you. Next item is on the agenda is items from the floor. At this time, members of the public may comment. Agenda individual comments will be limited to 3 minutes or less. Are there any items from the floor? Hey, it's quiet tonight. No items from the floor. Okay. All right. I'm not seeing any in the room or online, so I'm going to take us then to the consent agenda and ask the council if there are any questions, anything you'd like to pull on consent. I don't see any heads shaking, nodding yes. So any members of the public that would like us to pull items from on the consent agenda? Okay. Bring it back. And I'll go ahead and move to approve the consent agenda. And is there a second?
I'll second it.
All right, John seconds. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, so moved. So we've approved the consent agenda, which brings us into tonight's discussion action agenda items. And the first one is the update and discussion regarding the January 3rd, 2026 Scenic Drive water main leak and water shortage emergency status. I think everybody's very well aware that we had an issue with a pipe break on Scenic. And so we're going to have a good constructive discussion about kind of what happened. And I want to point out that there's no decisions being made. This is a dialogue and an information exchange. And in fact, all three of our agenda items tonight are really information and discussion. So it should be a good time to get your questions answered. So with that, I'll turn it over to Gabe.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I believe in full transparency when it comes to these things. I think that we, as staff, owe it to the public to answer questions. And there's a lot of questions, especially when there's business affected. People's livelihoods are affected. I know that businesses were closed for a couple of days, and I think, it's one thing to have a low water or have, a situation where your water system is not reliable for a moment. But it's another thing when there's, operational confusion or any communication confusion. I feel like staff did a pretty wonderful job personally. And when I say staff, I mean everyone from our contract staff down to our operational staff in-house. So I felt after, discussing with Mayor and Mayor Pro Tem this week that this would be a good opportunity to bring it up. So we can air it out. We can ask anyone would like to ask questions, especially council members that may have been participating. Maybe their neighbors were calling them, wondering what's going on, because I know that's what happens when you're in that position of authority. People know it, they start asking you if they can't get a hold of us. So, and not only that, but it was a wonderful, in an odd way, it was a wonderful learning experience for all of us as staff too, and we're going to be better from it. And I think a post-incident wrap is always a good thing. First of all, but I also, again, want to just open up the floor, provide a little bit of a summary, maybe show you some photographs, because I know there's even been some confusion as to where it occurred, how it occurred, and give you as much information as I can so that you can ask questions. And I think questions are good. And for tonight's meeting, as Mayor Kelly mentioned, there's no action requested, but I did want to invite, and I invited the various layers of our water system, technical staff, myself, Steve Allen, our city engineer, who you're all familiar with, for technical questions that he can help me answer or us answer. Our chief plant operator currently, Eric Sanders, who many of you probably heard his name, but you've probably never seen his face before. I thought it would be a good time to invite Eric to one of the meetings, and I believe he's going to pop up there on the screen in the upper right. Who was also very informative, very helpful, and right there on the spot when we needed him. And then our public works supervisor, Kyle, is here to answer any specific, maybe operational questions that I can answer. So we can dig right in. And just to present a little bit of a summary, there was a water main break that occurred on a problematic section of Scenic Drive during the overnight hours of January 3rd. That rapidly drained our tanks, 400,000 gallons of little drinking water. The tanks were actually about 85 to 90%. So it wasn't quite exactly 400,000, but it was pretty close. And we're going to use that number because we also lost some water in our distributions. So once you add all that up, it's about 400,000. And it triggered the first boil water notice issued by the city in, I want to say, over 25 or 30 years. Now, the impacts of this event were significantly disruptive to the community for 2 days, extremely disruptive to our own staff for about a week, and probably still ongoing, if I'm not mistaken. But the incident further emphasizes the ongoing concerns and vulnerability of a small water system challenged by increasing costs and regulatory and environmental pressures. This discussion is intended to open the conversation, as I mentioned, with the council community and provide access to management, technical, operational staff for questions, capture feedback, identify areas that can be improved, and recognize how our staff response and community support helped rebound from the water shortage, because it was both. It was our staff, they did a tremendous job, and the community. The community also helped too. We'll really be able to see when we do our usage and loss this coming month in January. We're going to see the big loss, but we're also probably going to see at least, what a week of extreme conservation, or at least an alert of conservation. 50% is how I refer to it, can help us rebound. So the leak location, timeline, and detail. So there was significant rain forecasted. Water treatment was shut down by staff approximately midnight on Saturday, January 3rd, with the tanks at 90% capacity. We started receiving our first alarm calls from the treatment plant shortly after 3 a.m. So less than 3 hours later, warning of a distribution system issue. I don't know exactly what those codes are and how those calls come to the employees, but they're generally not, they don't tell you where a leak is at. I think a lot of people were asking, like, how did you guys not know? No, they don't say leak detected, with a GPS port. They just say the tank is sensing some irregularity, right? So the first emails, calls, and texts that I received from customers nearest the tank elevation were received shortly after 5 a.m. So a lot of things happen in about a 2 to 3 hour period in the middle of the night, when the pressure began to drop. This trend continued until the pressure drop reached Main Street just before 8. So 3 a.m. to 8 a.m., a 5 hour period, I've calculated approximately 72,000 gallons of water were lost per hour over a 5 hour period. And that's about as rapid as anything I've ever seen. Let's see, so water service was reported out completely in parts of the distribution system at the highest elevations to the tank. And then pressure drops were reported from Main, Trinity, and Everett Street. So as you get lower in the distribution system, you know, when taps started getting turned on while the water was leaking on Scenic Drive, water started disappearing from the distribution system. As it did from the tank, it's now disappearing from the distribution system. So the folks up on Quarry Road, for instance, Mill Creek Lane, the highest elevations, West Haven Drive, they started feeling the outage. While lower elevations next in the tier were starting to experience the pressure drops. So that's why as soon as I opened my eyes early in the morning, took some phone call, and I could just see, I read the text messages and looked at my email immediately, and I could see what was happening. So the response and the recovery, public notification, what we started, staff began implementing the water shortage contingency plan as soon as the incident severity was realized. Public Works isolated leak and began assessing production challenges. Management began implementing the communication and emergency response notification systems. We used the website, we used phone calls, email lists, social media outlets to get the word out. Potable water trucking. So potable water trucking services were dispatched at 11 a.m. and a convoy of 4 1,650-gallon capacity vehicles operated by Courier Water and NorCal Water Delivery began shuttling water from the McKinneyville Community Services District directly to the city's water storage. We needed that water because we had no choice. We couldn't make water fast enough because the water coming out of Humboldt Creek that night was incredibly turbid. And the way our system functions is that we pull water through an infiltration gallery that is below the surface of the creek bed. But even in the most highest turbid moments, there's only so much our system can take. So they operated nonstop for 4 days with their last loads delivered on Tuesday when the tanks reached approximately 7 feet in elevation. Keep in mind that we have 2 tanks. We have a 250,000 gallon new stainless steel tank, and we've got a 150,000 gallon old redwood tank. And those tanks are equalized in height. They go to 18 feet tall. So by Tuesday, we finally reached the 7-foot elevation mark. And that's when we decided to now stop the truck. And also because it takes several feet, it's not a foot, I think it's about a foot to a foot and a half when we have to do a backwash of our system. So when you take water in for so long, you have filters that are getting dirtier and dirtier, and you have to then push that sediment back out because of the suction. So we need, oftentimes when we make water, we have to release water back to clean the filters to allow us to then begin production. So plant production and treatment. So extremely turbid water flowed through the left Humboldt Creek following a series of potential storms, slowing treatment and production significantly to approximately 20,000 gallons per day for the first few days. Treatment and production improved steadily as the storm passed and the creek cleared, increasing production to about 65,000 gallons per day from Tuesday on, relieving the city's reliance on the trucking companies. By Friday, the tanks reached 55% capacity, and by Sunday night, we were back to 100%. Staffing impacts of this event, Public Works and City Management worked around the clock, starting with the first sign of trouble early in the morning on Saturday. 4 shift operators rotated plant duty hours every 5 hours, 24 hours per day through Saturday. So approximately an entire week until the operation stabilized and the storage capacity reached 65%. Coordination and distribution of the boil water and high turbidity notices took a team of 5 people, approximately 6 hours to execute, from me drafting the orders with Eric Sanders' support. Duplicating them the next morning, preparing and delivering. Mayor and Mayor Pro Tem and a third council member joined Public Works and the administrative staff in the door-to-door distribution campaign that lasted approximately 4 hours. Daily updates were provided on the city's website through an emergency alert notification, and we encourage people who are listening, who are watching, to sign up if they haven't already to that notification alert system, because we send out text notifications. And I believe those text notifications were successfully delivered. But we also used our email system and social media networks that were shared by, I think, Resident Ted Pease, Cheryl Kelly, our mayor. Utilize social media to really get the word out, get the right information. Push notifications, I call them push. I think these are the ones that we send as a city as opposed to just posting on the website, sharing information. The pushes that we send were messages of significance, right? So when we had a change in the stats, when we had an update to share. So they were used, number one, for the notification of emergency. So day one, Saturday morning, we realized what had happened. We sent using our SMS test. Second time was when we issued the boil water notice, when we realized what had occurred, and when Eric Sanders, our T3, notified us of the regulatory procedures that needed to occur when a pressure loss occurred or not. We had at no time did we have any evidence or water tests that said that we had contaminated samples. But when a pressure loss like that occurs, and there could be a chance of backflow into the system, it's a requirement. End of story. Boil water as a precaution. We take that very serious. And then again, the third time we did it is in the boil water notice. Fiscal impact. So the fiscal impact of this event, just so everyone is aware, of council, is that I listed how many loads of water were required on a daily basis, and I cannot thank these trucking companies enough for what they did for us, that they do have a fee. They're not doing it out of the good graces of the department. But they did show up, they were willing, they were able, and they didn't stop until we asked them to stop. The cost of delivering 170,940 gallons of water over a 3-day period was $18,720. The leak repair on seating, we haven't received the invoice yet from GRS, but the preliminary estimate, I'm guessing, is going to be about $10,000. It was a Saturday, it wasn't a Sunday. Sunday, the price would have been, I think it would have been double time. Saturday, I think. Community business impacts. Again, this is kind of a soft spot for me because I do know a lot of the business owners personally, and I understand when an incident occurs, everybody wants to know why, how, when. But when businesses were asked to close, that I just want to remind everyone that is not a requirement of the city of Trinidad. That is a requirement of the Department of Environmental Health, who they are permitted to operate as a restaurant under the food safe and handling processes laws. So the city does what it does to issue the boil water notice, and the health department does what they do according to their laws and regulations. So reports were received from businesses that they were engaging in use of single-use disposable items in place of dishware to minimize water use during shortage. County Department of Environmental Health sent officials to Trinidad on Saturday to confirm that adequate hot water temperatures were required for food handling. This was before. This was immediately after we sent out the notification. The county sent out a team to make sure that at least under a low pressure system, that the temperatures and dishwashing capabilities, nothing that was happening at the restaurants was going to compromise public safety. That was step one. The second thing that occurred was when they had to businesses to close as a result. So the ripple effect of this 2-day incident was significant, and I again want to emphasize how well and how quickly our staff did, and that's not just from my perspective being in the heart of it, but also listening to our team. Eric Sanders, our T3 operator, Steve Allen, understanding our complex water system, understanding what happens when we have these perfect storms. And then also from Scott Gilbreth, who's our regulator from the state over in Red. He was kept informed of every step of the way. Because later on down the year, we're going to have to provide a report to the state, annual activities, and this event's going to be identified. In the meeting packet, I included, just for the record, so we can all remember this, and it's all in one spot, archived forever. The incidents and all the notifications that I published on the city's website. I also included the boil water notice, the boil water cancellation notice, and the turbidity exceedance notice. What I might do now, if it's okay, I'm gonna try to share my screen. Just so I can throw up a couple of visuals, we can talk about, first of all, maybe share, the identification, the exact spot where the leak occurred. So here's the map, right? So let's see if this. So if you follow. Here's the town, here's the intersection, go down Scenic Drive, come up towards Langford. And then. Continue down Langford, here's the McConaughey Creek draw right here. And up on Conahas Creek, and you reach this junction right here. This is pretty much this line I'm drawing with my arrow. If you can see it, is the city limit boundary with the Rancheria. Take a look here. So, right now. So this address right here is 170 Scenic Drive. Right here is where you see the fractures in the roadway. Come in there and you'll see this hydrant right here. This hydrant I'm going to show you a photograph of is where the pipe burst. It's a 6-inch PVC pipe that burst on that hydrant. So the good news is that it wasn't on this side. Because if it was on this side of the road, it could have gone across the road, it could have gone down the road into the culvert down or into a deep drop inlet, just a little ways down, and who knows where it would have gone. And I say the good news only because it was on the shoulder of the road, first of all. It's pretty heavily brushed right here, believe it or not, with some ferns. And it would have been very difficult to find, although we know the sweet spots to look for when we have issues like this. It would have been very difficult to find in the dark of the night in the middle of a rainstorm because it wasn't rushing across the road, going down the hill on private property. So again, here's just for reference, so you can see this is the approach up here now. If you look closer, this is an older photograph. But right now, this area is one-lane control traffic where my cursor is. I'm sure Patty recognizes this. She drives through this 10 times a day, probably. Yep. But you can see this photo was taken from 2024. There's stretch fractures in the road where it blew out in March of 2024 and in November. And this cut in the road right here is actually a bypass that was put in particular to. With, I believe it was the November 2024 leak. Because the water line comes up the road here, and then it continues up this direction on the vulnerable side, maybe the downslope side of the road. But this cut was put in here so with a T, so that if this section ever bursts, then the city could quickly run a bypass line, like connect a bunch of PVC pipes up this segment of road to the other edge up here, where then this section of the road that was failing was the most vulnerable. Anyway, so that's a picture of the road, and let me see if I can quickly jump to a photograph. I point down. So this photograph right here is a 6-inch pipe. So put that in perspective. And I believe this is the down slope. Look. So a 6-inch pipe, and it has that's about a foot long chunk of plastic that's missing there. We're not looking at like a tiny 1-inch EC pipe, but that is about a foot long chunk of plastic, which I believe in this photograph here, I just see sitting on the ground. Leak pile, is that right? Yeah. Yeah. So when this thing burst, that's a lot of ground on the roadway there. It just kind of made its way down slow with it. Laptop goes to sleep, the projector goes to sleep. You wake up the projector or the screen.
Just the projector and not the online. So just stand by, everybody. We're having a technical difficulty with the Zoom projection in the room. Yeah. Stand by.
Sure, that's all. Okay, here we go. Fire that back up and bring everybody back. Second thing should come back. There they go. Sure, it's up to that. So those are a couple of pictures of the leak site. We were notified of Butch Rendell from the Trinidad Rancheria. He was kind enough to call me at about 8:45 in the morning. And he says, hey, the water, I'm seeing a spot over here that looks a little extra red. And that's when he brought it to our attention. We were already, preparing boots on the ground, but he was able to identify it because he's very familiar with that stretch over to brought to our attention. And one last photo I'll share with you. It's kind of interesting is that these are the raw water, Kyle, is that correct? These are the raw water jar samples that we took on Monday. I think they were Monday. Yep. So the leak occurred in the overnight hour Saturday. This is the water that we were trying to treat coming out of the treatment gallery, which is pretty highly turbid water. So it was a little bit of a perfect storm. It was a little bit of a wake up call for all of us. And I stopped sharing my screen now. And I just wanted to reiterate how impressed I was with how quickly everyone has responded, and also how well we worked as a team in spite of the impacts of this has caused. So with that, I'd like to just turn it over to the council, ask any questions. Have a floor. So Steve Allen is here, GHD. I'm going to try to focus any technical questions to Steve. Eric Sanders, operational, regulatory questions, and then we've got Kyle here who can answer as well.
Before we start with questions, because I know everybody's very excited to ask questions, but I did want to just preempt a little bit to thank Public Works. I was out there, I think it was just fairly light, and the team were going like crazy trying to find sleep. And I want to thank the Rancheria, of course, for bringing it to our attention. So I just wanted to kind of preempt by just saying thank you. I really, you guys worked around the clock for like a week. So starting with that kind of emergency, fire drill, so to speak. So thank you to everyone for that. So now, council, if you would like to.
Yeah, Gabe, one of the questions a lot of the neighbors are asking me is if we were ever connected to Humboldt Bay, how would this huge leak, what would have been different, essentially, if we were connected to Humboldt Bay at this moment?
So glad you asked that question. Because I was prepared to answer that question. And in fact, I had a nice phone call with Michiko Maris, the general manager of the Humboldt Bay Municipal Water District. We actually were staying in communication during this incident. And she offered a lot of encouragement, a lot of pep talks, as they too have had their situations. One most recently happened, I think, near the Arcade Community Forest, where they had a big leak. But good question. So the first thing she said was, well, you would have had your storage tanks back and refilled within a day. So that was one big question. It took us 7 days, almost 7.5, 8 days. The second thing that she mentioned that would been different is that they have just if we have 24/7 observations of our system. And I say, well, yeah, we do. We have calls out that, our treatment plant does have some automation, which allows, it senses irregularities and it sends messages to the operators. But they're asleep. They have to wake up. They have to look at the call. They have to investigate. Whereas Humboldt Bay Municipal has 24/7 people at the computers that can sense irregularities, pressure drops. And there was one more One more thing she said that would have been different. Down. I have a feeling you were gonna ask, but the one that I thought was most poignant was the one where, they would have turned on the pressure and they would have filled our tanks. And that would have been helpful considering how vulnerable we were in this next 7-day period trying to replenish our tanks.
Would the water be treated, or would we still have to treat their water coming in?
It would be treated.
All right, other questions from the council? First of all,
Thank you. I was astonished. Efficiency and commitment. And hats off to Mayor Kelly as well, up at the crack of dawn. I have two specific questions. You mentioned it's 18,000 for the drinking water. How much for the water that ran downhill?
Well, the water that ran down the hill took power to produce, right? So energy costs to pump it up to our storage tanks. Chemicals and the polymers and the chlorine. I don't have an exact number for that. It was. I wish I could answer that. I can't, but
It's lost revenue to this city.
yeah, lost revenue. And, at this point, we don't have any evidence to believe that the water that ran down the hill across private property did any damage. But that is a very significant concern still to this day. So it just happened to take the right path. I'm not saying it didn't, and I can't say for a fact that it did. That is something I'm investigating with the current homeowners down there. In fact, one of them I called, he's a friend of mine. I said, hey, you notice any waterfalls, in your backyard? And he's like, I haven't left the house all day. I gotta go take a look. And he sent me some photographs for the record of what had occurred. Debris flow mainly, not heavy mud flow or anything, but just enough debris that was moving its way down a path. But yeah, the staff time, as you can see, took 7 days to replenish the tanks. On a good day, we probably could have done it in half, maybe 4 days, 5 days, not 7 or 8. We wouldn't have lost those first 3 days first 2 days of very extremely low production while we were fighting that turbine. Wow. So, but had that storm continued for 3 days, 4 days, be a different story.
I have a few questions, but Bryce, did you have something?
The graphics were very helpful. Curious, where. Yeah, all that, I really appreciate that. Engineer, possibly, question is, where the pipe actually broke, was that because of the geologic instability of that region, or was it plastic fatigue situation where it just couldn't take the internal pressure? We have the insight into what exactly went wrong there.
Steve, did you get that question?
Yeah, I believe so. We were a little muffled, but I think I got the gist of it. I'll try to answer, and if I didn't address something, let me know. We're not exactly sure. We haven't gone through and tried to do a analysis of exactly what broke. That is an area that's pretty unstable geologically, as the photos that Gabe was showing from Google Earth. We know that there's issues up there. The Rancheria is currently being proactive on trying to address some of that instability, and City and Rancheria has worked together on those items on Scenic Drive for years. So it is in an area of instability. The spot exactly where the pipe broke near the hydrant didn't overtly look like it was unstable, but that can translate through a pipe if a different part is moving. So whether it was a slight material deficiency of the PVC pipe or related to some of the geologic instability is not 100% certain.
It's like it would probably be one of those two things. So
those would probably be the two most likely, but yeah, there are. It's hard to tell without doing a kind of a forensic analysis of it, and I don't know if that's warranted or not, but it's yeah, it's unclear exactly what caused it to begin with.
I'm really interested in try to, try to learn as much as I can about the system. One question, which side of the road is the main line on? Which side or the
It actually, and Kyle may be able to verify that more than I, but that's an area where it switches from one side to the other. And we have had some problems in that area. And that's one reason why that kind of that emergency bypass was put in place in case the slide happens again before more permanent repairs are made.
Okay. Is it worth considering or exploring whether something maybe is put from the main line can move a little bit if the road is, stable there? Do they make a flexible water line for that?
It's a good question, and I think that should be looked at more. There's not necessarily a full flexible water line that could be put in place. There are some things like HDPE pipe has more flexibility than a rigid pipe. You can put in PVC pipe with pipe constraints that hold it together. You can go to a heavier duty material like ductile iron and clamp those together. But those are also, all rigid pipes. And if the land moves in an unstable area, then things can still break. They'll cause stress and things will break somewhere. So I think it's worthwhile looking at that area more as to what could be done in the future, but there's not really a, simple magic answer that we should put a flexible pipe through that whole area and that would solve it. If the earth moves very much, it's still any type of pipe system is going to be likely compromised.
Is the system, is it all gravity flow from the tanks down to the city, or is that pumped?
No, it is a gravity fed system.
Okay. And do both tanks drop at the same rate, essentially?
Correct. They are connected, so essentially they're dropping it at the same rate or the same elevation, right? When the water surface is dropping, it's dropping the same in both tanks.
Is the bigger one or the smaller one further downhill towards the city?
The smaller one is near the outlet. The tanks are literally at the same elevation. The water is fed into the new tank, feeds into the older, smaller tank, and then out down to the city.
Yeah. What I'm trying to picture is if there's a way to, in the future, if we have a similar problem, to not lose both tanks. In other words, further downhill and way to, once we realize that the leak is bad enough that it's going to take out both tanks, to essentially close the valve between the tanks so that we don't lose them both.
Correct. And it's a good question. And it's something that we've been talking internally with staff. And part of that is likely part of the second tank replacement project, where there's been discussions about trying to actually run power up to the site. Because right now and historically, there has been no power at the site. So to have any kind of automated valves or valves that could be closed through SCADA, that requires power. So that's something that has been on the board for discussion, and we're still having those conversations and trying to figure out what the best approach would be based on this.
But could you just have a manual valve between the two tanks that the operators could just shut?
Yes, that is an option as well.
Okay. Seems like that shouldn't be too expensive if we put in something like that.
I believe that there is and Kyle, again, you can correct me if I'm wrong on this. I believe there is a manual valve already between the new and old tank. I think the challenge is the uncertainty of where a leak is and how fast it's happening and what's happening. So is the time best spent to try to go up and close a manual valve, or if you can isolate a spot further down the system, then you can isolate the system sometimes with other valves in the distribution system. So it's kind of a question of where is your time best spent. And when you first start getting alarms, and especially in the middle of the night, sometimes it's challenging to figure out what your best option is.
Absolutely, no doubt. So yeah, so there are other shut-off valves that can shut off basically a section of the system if you know the leak is in that vicinity, right?
Correct. Without compromising the rest of the customers in the city. And it's also, you know, when you have a water leak, you want to shut the water off, obviously, and not drain the tanks. But then if you have a situation where you have a fire or something else, and there's other reasons why that water is being used, you don't necessarily want an automated system that's just going to shut everything down either. So it's a good question, and there's potential improvements that could be made in the future that are being discussed and looked at.
Right, yeah, I would think if you had an automatic shut off, it would be important to have some kind of override. So you could, you know, countermand it and turn it back on, like it said it was a fire situation. It was really. I'd like to know more about the alarm system. Is there just one alarm that goes out, or is there various kinds of alarms that can signal different things?
The more a question for Eric, maybe than Steve, or what do you think, Gabe?
Yeah, I'm gonna defer to Steve and Eric on this one, but I think what do we call the system? It's a verbatim? Is that the terminology that we use, that the phone call out system? And can you maybe, I'm not sure, it's either Eric or Kyle can just kind of speak to the kind of information that comes through that system? Maybe start with Eric.
Sure. So the verbatim alarm dialer is a pretty basic alarm system, excuse me, that is connected to the phone system, and it has a number of alarm channels available. The channels are numbered, and when it dials out, there's a voice that tells you channel 1, channel 2, channel 3, whatever it is, and what the status is. And it's pretty rudimentary. I think there are channels for this, and Kyle could probably step in here, but there's channels for tank level, distribution system pressure, probably, chlorine residual, turbidity, things like that. The basics for, you know, your Title 22 drinking water regulations. And so that's pretty much all they have. It'll call out, you know, on a loop until somebody acknowledges the call. And then once the condition changes, whether it's normal now, let's say, and then it'll restart that call rotation. And it'll go around and call all the people on the call down list until somebody essentially acknowledges the fact that that condition that was abnormal is now normal. And that's basically it. So unless you know what the codes are, you don't really know, because it'll say channel 1, normal, channel 2, alarm. And that's basically all it'll say. So.
Okay, so it's a phone system. So somebody gets a phone call when the alarm goes off?
Correct.
And then there's a voice recording?
There's a voice, yeah, there's a recorded voice, and then the alarm system will allow you to input information. So you'll take your phone and you'll hit buttons on the keypad, you know, to acknowledge or to do whatever. And then at that point, the alarm dialer will just hang up on you. And so that's the extent of the alarm system that you have.
Okay.
So there are other things out there, but that's the one that you have installed today is that rudimentary system that a lot of water systems use it. I've been operating plants for 20 years, and I would say at least half of them have that type of system. So it's very common.
Okay. So did somebody on staff answer that first alarm?
Yes, the alarm did get answered and acknowledged at some point. Kyle could tell you more about that. I wasn't there. I don't know exactly who picked up the phone and acknowledged it when. My theory is that multiple people answered the alarms at different times because there were probably different alarms as it rolled through. If that makes sense.
Well, do we have like standard operating procedures for alarms that come in the middle of the night like that?
I don't think there's anything written down as an SOP, but Kyle, you can probably jump in here. However, the way that it works in reality is that when the operator receives the call and they acknowledge it, they should then either log in remotely to the SCADA to see if this is just a nuisance alarm based on a blip in the phone system or whatever, power blip maybe, or if this is something real. If it's something real, then the operator should then respond to that, by going to the plant or going to whatever the alarm call is for.
So they have to like affirmatively sort of check and see if it's a real alarm?
Yes. However, what you don't have is the ability to go back and check to see when the calls were made and when they were acknowledged and by whom. There's no data collection there on that machine. So it's really hard to understand what time the calls came in, which calls or which alarms were active at what times and who answered it when and who acknowledged them and when that was. But Kyle, you can probably tell the story a little bit better than I can about how the night unfolded.
Thank you. Kyle, did you want to comment? And then I'm going to.
Yeah. So I received my first call. It was right around 7:30 from Derek. The first two alarms that I got were at 3 a.m. and 3:30. So I was not on call that night, and the first alarm that went off was storage tank level low. And sometimes that's normal if we get below a certain level. And then that's oftentimes one that will kick on the water plant by itself. So we don't really have to mess with it. We can check on SCADA on our phone to verify that the plant's doing its normal operation. The second one that we got following was distribution flow rate high. And that is one that we don't want to see. So by the time we got that, we made the round of phone calls to all the staff members. Some of us live in Arcata, McKinleyville, Trinidad. As soon as we all got our heads together, got dressed, woke up, drove to town, figured out what was going on, drove around the entire distribution system to find the leak. It was, I want to say, around 7 a.m. to 7:30 when we were able to find the leak, isolate 2 valves, and stop the water from flowing.
I think that that's a good review of what happened. I think one of the things we can talk about down the road is looking at the emergency communications and just how does it work? What if there are any improvements we can make to the system? And then also, communication to the public. And we did, I think, a really effective job. I would say the only gap was maybe from the time we all knew, what was going on and when we could tell the public. And sometimes the best thing to do at that point is we could have just posted on the website and said, hey, there's a problem and we're looking into it. And so that's, I'll take that as feedback too.
One last question. Was the West Haven emergency intertie active at this moment? Could we have used it?
That's a great question.
I think Steve and Eric are sitting there going, man, we talked about this conversation. We had all these conversations already. We've anticipated these questions. And yes, it was within days of potentially being functional. And immediately, I believe it was Sunday, I placed a call to, I think we talked about it internally. We talked about it with the contractor. I spoke to the contractor the day that it occurred. I wanted to know where exactly he was at with the disinfection of the line. So the line, all the plumbing was basically ready, minus some of the electrical work that needed to be done for the pumping of the water from one place to the next. And Trinidad, I think, receives water by gravity, if I'm not mistaken, through the intertie, because the last segment of West Haven's distribution system, which we connected to, is upslope, uphill, out of the left of Little Creek. But when we go the opposite direction, we pump it. So in this particular case, their January 15th is a construction deadline for this project. And the contractors have been working nonstop to get the project done. And we also had some robust conversations about production. For instance, the MOU between the intertie between the city and the West Haven community calls for I think a 20 to 40 gallon per minute availability of that water in an emergency. My calls to West Haven's operator, Paul Rosenblatt, the general manager over there, he said on a good day we can probably give you 20 to 30,000 gallons of water per day. That's about all we're looking for. So just to put that in perspective, on a good day, Trinidad pumps about 60 to 70,000 gallons of water. And I think currently right now at 150,000 cubic feet per month consumed, my math says that that's about, we're using about 50,000 gallons per day. So if you think about the 30,000 gallons, West Haven has about 100 customers less. So where that 30,000 gallon number came from West Haven probably has to do with what Mr. Rosenblatt felt their system could afford, minus what they're consuming. So we're able to produce 20,000 more gallons than we consume every day. So that can be a benefit to us. Whereas they probably are unable to do as much. So we calculated that if it was functional and operational, about 20 to 30,000 gallons. And that's equivalent to about 1 foot in our tank. So every foot in that 18-foot tank is about 22 to 25,000 gallons of water, which in a highly turbid situation, we would put that water in our tank and we would have to spit it right back out for a backwash cycle. So, and I believe we were able to get that amount of water from the trucking companies within 5 hours. So that helps.
And that was great that the trucking companies are available to that place, of course.
I just had a couple of quick questions. So I think we kind of covered the root cause on prevention, and I know I think there's a long-term plan that we have for scenic, right, to do a bypass or change the structure of the distribution system on scenic because it is so active. And so we talked about that a little bit. We talked about redundancy. So the interties, there's a discussion about whether we should have an intertie to the Humboldt Bay Municipal Water District, but that's a separate topic. I think the communications we just talked about, fiscal strategy. So it is costing the city money, but we did have an opportunity, I think maybe through Cal OES, potentially we might, I don't know if there's an opportunity to get some money back. That might be an interesting thing. And then I guess the last thing I had was turbidity. So there's a turbidity bottleneck, right? And I don't know, and maybe this is a question for the engineer. Is there a capital improvement path that would, improve the system so that turbidity isn't such a big problem if we do have to refill quickly? So I think the first four we've kind of already talked about, but maybe you can comment on the turbidity challenge.
Yeah, Eric, Steve, just bring in on this one. We had a nice conversation, I believe it was yesterday, about this exact concept and improvements to the tank, to the infrastructure of the city's water treatment plant that would make handling that water even easier. I think there was a big move in improvements in the system back in I want to say it was about 2014, 15 to where we added Steve, maybe it was a clarifier or some additional components of our system that would allow us to treat clearer water, not perfect water, but as far as some of the improvements, the capital improvements that we're thinking about, we kicked the tires on yesterday. We thought about prioritization as well. So maybe I'll let Steve and perhaps Eric speak to this one.
Yeah, the last big improvements were right around 2014 or so, and there were multiple improvements to the system at that point. Turbidity has been an issue historically in the middle of winter, and requires backwash, as Eric was mentioning before. There are some potential upgrades that could be made to make that easier, and actually I'll hand it over to Eric, who had some suggestions the other day as far as some components that might be, fairly reasonably implemented in order to help that situation. So Eric, give it to you.
Sure. Thanks. The first thing is I just want to say that the turbidity exceedance notice was issued because of the fact that the backwash tank and the backwash system that you have there isn't large enough. So because the water plant is normally offline during these large storm events, it's not really set up to run when the source water is very muddy, which was the case. And so in order for the water plant staff to make adjustments to the chemical feed system and sort of troubleshoot the pumps and all that, they had to produce water and send it into the distribution line that goes between the water plant and the storage tanks. That's not normally done. What's normally done is you would take that filtered water and push it into the backwash tank for recovery later until the water plant turbidity, chlorine residual, and all the other Title 22 requirements are met. Then it gets sent to the distribution system. Okay, so the first thing I would recommend is to do an upgrade to the backwash tank, maybe add a second tank, and also upgrade your chemical feeds with maybe another type of heavy coagulant that is more suited for heavy turbidity source waters. That's relatively inexpensive. You could probably get away with that for $50,000-$60,000. I know it sounds like a lot, but in the grand scheme of things, $50,000-$60,000 is relatively inexpensive to have the surety that you're going to be able to produce water in an emergency situation when you need to. So
Yeah,
that would be the first thing I would recommend. Right, that's the top priority. After that, there's a host of other things you could do, like install extra loops in your distribution system. You could add other storage tanks at other locations that are high in elevation. You could add extra inner ties specifically to Humboldt Bay. I would recommend that. And then also, of course, a complete plant upgrade or replacement. That's very expensive, and you probably don't have the money to do that anytime soon. But, in the long term, 10, 15, 20 years down the road, that plant's going to be ready for a replacement. So.
All right, thank you very much. I appreciate you giving us kind of a rundown of things that we should look at, because I think that's what everybody's looking to do now, is improve the system and avoid, emergency water shortages, but also the stress and strain on staff and everything else.
Yeah, the water plant, it works well, and all that, but it really is like 1960s or 1970s technology for the most part. And so there are other technologies out there. And Steve, I'm sure you can think of a handful of them that would be much more compact, much less expensive to give you a brand new treatment plant, probably smaller than a 20-foot shipping container, that would double or triple your production capacity, that are relatively inexpensive. But I say relatively, like 2, 3, 400,000, something like that, for like a maybe 100 to 150 gallon per minute plant. So,
Okay, thank you.
sure, thank you.
I think at this point we should go to public comments and questions, so we have time to get that in, and then I'll bring it back to the council for any final thoughts. So let me just go to members of the public. Ms. Hostler-Carmison, I see you have your hand raised. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate you calling on me. I have to jump off the call in a few minutes for another appointment, but I just wanted to, on behalf of Trinidad Rancheria Tribal Council, we're very appreciative of the hard work that Gabe and your crew did. And we did work well together, and there's a lot I could say, but I'm going to save it for the government-to-government consultation meeting on Friday. What I do want to say with the public here is that Trinidad Rancheria has put out to bid a emergency scenic drive repair project. It's out for bid right now in the Humboldt Builders Exchange. And the area that Gabe was showing that is failing further up from where the water hydrant leak occurred, the water leak near the fire hydrant where that occurred, is further up where it is a one-lane road and coned off right now. But we're going to be doing a soldier pile wall to stabilize and try and stop the movement. And we do not have any plans to do any upgrades to the water system. That's not part of our project. It's specifically to stabilize the roadway. But we will be opening the road up. It will be one-way traffic with traffic lights, stop and go. And there may be things we find as part of that excavation to build a soldier pile wall. So we can talk more about that as well at our government-to-government meeting. But what we know from all of the geotechnical work and the inclinometers in the area, we've been studying the area for a very long time. It's actively moving. It's actively moving. So it's not surprising that stress in any area could have been responsible for that pipe bursting. So we'll just look forward to talking more with the city's representatives that come for the government-to-government. But we do have a project out right now trying to stabilize the area between the Sunberg driveway and further up, it ends before Gene Walker's driveway. So that whole area we're looking at stabilization. And moving, there's a culvert on the other side of the road that drains water from the watershed that goes down into McConaughey's Mill Creek. That culvert is going to be refurbished. So there's a lot of, I think, interesting information, and we're happy to share that with the city regarding the plans. And I know Steve Allen and Gabe will be interested in the project as well.
That's great. Thank you. Yeah, I look forward to hearing about that. And again, appreciate the Rancheria letting us know about the leak and the partnership on repairing scenic. So
I would like to learn about the next item, but unfortunately I can't stay. Could I get an update on the Axel Lindgren Memorial Trail after the meeting, or I'm not sure how, maybe at the government to government with tribal council.
Yeah, whichever works. We can either chat afterwards, Gabe and I can chat with you about it, or we can discuss it on Friday. Either way.
Okay.
Definitely we'll get you an update.
Awesome. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Other public comments? Please. Ms. Thompson. Coming to the podium.
Yeah. Anita Thompson, a Trinidad water customer. First of all, I wanted to say thank you to everyone for acting so. First of all, Saturday was horrible weather. That part, it was wind and rain, and you know, all of you getting out there and doing what you needed to do to make this happen for the customers, for the businesses, for the school, and for everyone. And I felt really badly for everyone too. I mean, of course, we were affected, but I felt badly for the city workers and everyone that had to, you know, go through this crisis. And then special thanks to Public Works Supervisor Kyle Shipman and his team getting out there, and that weather, not sleeping, phone ringing off the hook, and also concerned for their safety, you know, driving around with no sleep and working in that weather. I appreciate the city manager, Gabe, with your transparency and detailed explanation and bringing in all the experts here, Steve Allen and Carl Anderson, to answer questions. I appreciate the what if analysis. For example, the what would happen if the West Haven intertide wasn't working, was implemented, and how that would affect us. Friday night, I went to a friend's 70th birthday party in Arcata, got there early, and saw Arcata on fire, downtown Arcata on fire. The celebration was wonderful. Very sad about the fire. I'm also coming from the campfire, so I'm a survivor of that. And then I did really appreciate when city manager gave in the emergency, sorry, I get a little emotional. The notification letting people know that not only to be water wise, but to be fire wise, because I'm always thinking about that, you know. And then when also reading that if there was a fire, we would have to get the water from the fire hydrants in West Haven. That was very concerning. And would that have been for also, the question is, would that have been for 7 days or 5 days approximately, or?
At least half.
Yeah. And just really appreciate everyone. Just really do. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Thompson. Thank you. Other public comments or questions? All right, I'll bring it back to the council. I don't see any hands raised. I'll bring it back to the council for any, excuse me, final thoughts.
I just had one quick question for Gabe. I was kind of interested in that 50,000 gallons per day that's used by Trinidad. Off the top of your head, do you know how many residential hookups we have off our water system, and maybe how many commercial hookups?
That's a really good question. I should have known that. It's good trivia. It's good. Something that I look at on a regular basis. I would say we have 323 customers. Okay, so 323 connections.
I think it's closer to 1,000 hookups though, because
I think it's 1,000 people using the water, but we have 323 actual meters that we go out and read. Okay. So of that, we've got a very small commercial sector, but I think the way I understand it correctly is that we I have to be careful. I might have to get back to you on that one. There's a statistic that basically, like, I think it was in our water rate study that said X amount of our water, the majority of our water was used by the larger users. Even though the larger users only make up like 25% or less, and the 75% are residential customers. So I think it's like 75% of our water is used by 20% of our customers. So it's it's in the rate study. We can pull that data.
Yeah, okay.
Really good data.
Yeah, it's a good thumbnail sketch of what we were dealing with here. So thanks.
Yeah, I mean, one comment I would make is it would be great if everybody ate local for the next week or so, go to the local restaurants, shop at Murphy's. I mean, maybe we can get the word out that, we can help recoup some of those losses because the losses were big. The other thing I realized too, a CERT team in the room, the Community Emergency Response Team, and we're going to hear from them later this evening, is we could utilize them in emergencies and some of the door-to-door work that the council did, putting the notices out would be, something that would be perfect for the CERT team because that's why they're here. So we should always think of them in our plan. Right, other last thoughts, and then we're gonna move on.
I want to thank everybody for the technical information and stuff that we better understanding. Some more. The old saying, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. I think applies here on what we can find to be able to isolate our 210. If this ever happens again, take a measure to prevent full tanks from draining, much better tactical position to deal with the water through. Anyway, I know there's going to be a lot of good minds working on it. So, and thanks everyone for your input.
Right. I'm going to go ahead and move us on to item number 2, which is an update discussion regarding the Axel Lindgren Memorial Trail repair, Coastal Commission CDP appeal status, agency roles, procedure, progress, and timeline. So this will be a good, again, an informational discussion about what's going on with the Axel Lindgren. All right, I'll turn it over to you, Gabe.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So I'm going to borrow from a little bit here from Trevor's staff report, but I'm going to pull her in also on this conversation. We've been meeting called the Axel Lindgren Memorial Trail Working Group since I believe it was October. But the reason I'm bringing this before you today is because we didn't have our meeting in December. The last time we talked about this in public was, I believe, during the appeal process, September. And although I've been giving some detailed reports to you either by email on progress and the intensity of these discussions that have been occurring, I know Mayor Kelly may not be here next month, may not be attending the meeting. So as a full group, I felt like, a lot can happen in a few months, in 4 or 5 months, time flies. And it'd be a good idea to just bring it to speed. Second reason why I thought I could bring this to your attention tonight and have a discussion about it is because I've heard a lot of comments over the course of the last month or 2 of my participation in these meetings, actually it's 3 months now, that gave me kind of a cause for concern, specifically with regards to how this body, our council, is approaching this subject. And I just wanted to put in one place in this meeting packet, for instance, just the agreements, first of all, the settlement agreements that all point to various steps in this process, how the trail was built, just to add a little color and enlighten our council as to, some of the history of how we got to where we are today in terms of, where that trail came from, how it's been maintained, the various agreements and settlements, management plan that have all, we can't forget. I should say. Also, because I invited Melissa Kramer from the Coastal Commission here, because again, this is an appeal. that we are involved with. And I think we have an obligation on some level to understand what that means for us. I think I've heard a few comments about, well, the Coastal Commission is taking over the project, so maybe they should take some of the first steps. When I think about appeals, the last time we've had a significant appeal in town was a property that was developed on the bluff on Edwards and Trinity. And that property was Trevor mentions it a little bit. She kind of goes into it as far as the appeal process is concerned. She talks about how the developer that wanted to build the house, when a neighbor objected to the house that he was going to build being too high and blocking his view, and appealed the planning commission's decision that then went before the coastal commission. It wasn't on the person that appealed. It wasn't their checkbook that had to open up. It was the guy that wanted to build the house that then was subject to the scrutiny of the coastal commission's now facilitation of this permit, right? So it didn't go away. And I asked Trevor, we've been brainstorming different ways to bring this conversation up that doesn't get us too deep into the weeds on the exact things that are going on behind the scenes, because we don't necessarily have design. We're approaching those concepts in our G2Gs theoretically. But we are hoping to reach some consensus moving forward and understand, what everyone's needs are. But then at the same time, I think a lot of us haven't walked down that trip. We haven't seen that trail. We may not even really understand what's happening along the closed portion of that trail. So I don't know. I like making good decisions, and I like to see decisions made with good information. So I thought I would just use this opportunity today as a reminder, putting these documents in one packet, and also we'll be able to share this information with our friends who we will be meeting in these CBG meetings. We can point them to this document and say, here's where we're at, but we're coming to you to talk more about the subjects. So with that said, I think I'd like to maybe turn over to Trevor, if she could support me on this one a little bit, maybe fill in some of the maybe talk about some of the documents that are included in this packet material, including the frequently asked questions, the FAQs for the appeals and how they work at the coastal commission level. And then at some point we can invite Melissa to say a few words about her expectations with this process, maybe a little bit about timeline. But I guess I'll turn it over now to Trevor and let her elaborate a little bit on what we've included in the meeting.
Sure, thanks. So yeah, this, unfortunately, this isn't, a real straightforward appeal process. I think one of the things I pointed out in there is that, the appeal is somewhat complicated by the fact that this is a public trail. Closure of the trail also requires a CDP. And so the city's kind of stuck in a difficult position where we can't just withdraw the project if we decide we don't like it or, don't want to continue moving forward with it, because then we'd still have to process a CDP to close the trail. And that would likely be appealed as well. So I think that the current process is probably the most efficient at this point. Coastal Commission has taken on the role of a facilitator to try and come up with a consensus on a plan for reopening the trail. I think another important point is that we're looking at a phased reopening plan that is fairly similar to what the City Council approved in May. The primary difference is the first phase of the trail, where the City Council approved the cable steps and reopening in the existing alignment. Right now, the working group, we're looking at a partial reopening, so the upper approximately third or so of the trail to the first landing, that would be a vista point. That would be phase one. And then phase two would be what we've been talking about for the last year or more, and that would be rerouting the bottom portion of the trail to the traditional pathway that goes to the west instead of the east. And that's a little bit more complicated because it's going to require some stabilization of the slope there. But the cable steps wasn't necessarily that's going to be subject to erosion as well. So, and I think one of the keys is that Coastal Commission staff would like to permit both those phases as part of this appeal. So we're not just looking at, partial reopening and then what? It would actually be both phases, permitting the actual reopening of the trail in the new alignment, with responsibilities and timelines and various requirements to make sure that process continues, and the studies get done and the design and all that gets done. So I think, the process is moving forward. Obviously it's, holidays kind of get in the way of being able to meet and being able to get all the various parties together. But Coastal Commission staff have been responsive to requests for meetings, both with individual parties and with all the stakeholders. So I think that's moving forward in a good way. And I think we should continue with that process. We don't have any details of the plan really yet. I think the upcoming G2G meetings that the city has scheduled or is working on scheduling is an important step to keep that process moving forward. So, and after that, hopefully we can work out some of the more details and go to the Coastal Conservancy with an application for funding, because they are on board with providing funding to get that trail repaired and reopened.
Great, thank you, Trevor. Gabe, did you have anything else you wanted to add?
No, not right now.
Okay.
And turn it over to you and feel free to ask us questions.
All right, let's start with the councilors' questions for staff. I'm pretty up to speed on this, so I don't have any questions at this time. Well, I'm sure I could come up with something. Do you get something?
Well, I have one comment. I read the report and I think it were together. I do, however, I have to respectfully disagree with the conclusion. Last paragraph of the first page where it says, city was to withdraw its application, thereby ending the appeal. We have to reopen the trail in its current state, which poses a public safety hazard and liability to the city. I've got some pictures I'd like to show everybody of what the bottom of the trail looks like as of yesterday. It's no more dangerous than Fenway Trail or the trails over in the state park right now. It's completely usable. The way it is without any crib steps. It's not the easiest to negotiate, but most of our coastal trails are like that, bottom portion that are subject to the yearly erosion. So go ahead and still on one.
Can you tell us again the paragraph, sorry, that you're referring to, Bryce? I'm not finding it.
The last page of the last paragraph of the first page of the report. So the picture there in the middle is looking down from the cable steps could be placed, but without cable steps, so you find out that you're in trouble. Left is looking up, same thing, scramble up there, what the trail. Yeah, that's just another one And then this one shows the one on left shows the vegetation barrier that exists near right where the top of the cable steps would be. So as far as protecting cultural resources, I don't see how the existence of this trail makes them any more vulnerable, because that vegetation is so thick with blackberry thing, you cannot walk through there. You can't do it. So I don't really understand the rationale that says that we have to close this trail in order to protect coastal resources, cultural resources. They're just as vulnerable. From when you get down to the beach, there's opportunities. Person, yeah, so. I think it's an interesting possibility. It's a way to maybe resolve this situation short of going through the whole appeal process.
What's your point?
Just
Can you reiterate your point?
Take down the fences and say the trail is open. People can walk down that bottom section without cable strips, just the way it is right now.
I think that it's been determined by the city engineer, and I would like to defer to them, to Trevor and Gabe, to staff to reply. But my understanding is that it's been, this has been reviewed by the city engineer and staff, and it was not deemed to be safe to open the trail as is. So your suggestion to open the trail as is, I believe we've discussed it, and this project is now in appeal with the California Coastal Commission. So I'm not sure we can make a decision on that.
Well, I'm not saying we should make a decision right now. I'm just commenting on the staff report and providing another perspective and another opinion. Because let's not forget, we have trail immunity, protects us from liability on all our trails. So if someone's hurt walking down the trail,
I think there are caveats to that, but I'm not an attorney, so I'll defer to the city attorney on that. So staff, you want to reply to Bryce's comment about opening the trail as is, and then I have a couple of questions too.
Trevor, what do you think about that?
I mean, I can't necessarily speak to the safety or liability issues necessarily. That may be true. I will just also point out that the Ancestral Society is very opposed to reopening the trail in the current alignment. So that's another consideration. But and I don't know if Steve has anything to add about the safety issues, but I don't know if the insurance company has taken a look at that trail lately.
Yeah, for the record, city engineer hasn't made an official assessment of safety. That's not really under our purview. I think safety has been brought up, and I think it's a valid question whether or not it's really safe. I know there is some general immunity, legally, and I think it is more of a question for either city attorney or also the city's risk manager. So we can all have our opinions on how safe it is or isn't. It's not an ideal trail, and it is, Bryce pointed out, it's similar to a lot of other trails around. But I just want to clarify that I have not done any assessment on the safety, and that's really not part of our purview.
Okay, so I guess I was assuming that we were considering it not safe because we came up with several engineering solutions to address repair. So those engineering solutions, not necessarily made by you, Steve, but the proposals that were made by GHD, for example, the cable step renewal, which we also discussed in our trails discussions, was also, we were going to replace what was there. We weren't going to just leave it as is. That was the last option, right?
Make it more safe.
Yeah.
Cable steps, but that doesn't mean it's unsafe without them. Just means you have to be a little more careful and so forth.
I guess I would do, I think we should look into how safe it is or unsafe. I'm not sure I feel prepared to make a comment on
That's why I don't think
Yeah.
survey to look into it.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I go down there all the time and I'll tell you, it doesn't look safe to me, but, it's literally a drop off of about 15 feet straight down.
Oh, no,
So.
no, you need to take another look at it.
But-
It's a much more gradual angle.
Okay.
Now,
Okay. All right. Well, I really.
reached its angle of repose
Yeah.
for a while.
Okay. All right, so I have a question regarding, just to do a consensus check, which I this discussion is a great example of, which is, are all the stakeholders aligned on this phased concept? Or are there specific sticking points, the council should be aware of? In other words, and I don't know if this is maybe for Trevor or the Coastal Commission. So has everyone agreed to this phased approach? All the stakeholders, and I guess we'll have to see if the city, also agrees, but.
Yeah, Trevor, I'll take a stab at this. I think she mentioned in their staff report that there's been a little bit of a revised phase look at, Trevor, did your staff report say something to that effect? Like, we're looking at definitely a phased approach, starting with Vista Point, starting, part of the permit to get a Vista Point open about a third of the way down, while the traditional trail route construction is being investigated. I believe that those two steps are generally agreed upon. How we get to a consensus as to what infrastructure there would be required to satisfy all parties, that is currently being discussed. And that's what we're kind of referring to as the design of this approach. You might remember, I think it was in October of 23, I believe. I guess I had my notes October where we heard a proposal that came from Natura, sort of like grand staircase concept. That's hasn't gone away, but primarily with regards to handrails going down the trail for roof safety, that's one thing that's been discussed. But again, we're still in the conceptual phase. We're trying to reach a consensus as to exactly how that looks, but phased approach, yes.
Okay, so then my following questions about timeline and cost, we wouldn't have that just yet. So
the timeline, we don't have the cost yet, but I, as far as timeline, are you talking about, for opening the trail, also reopening the trail, maybe getting a permit from the Coastal Commission? That's why I invited Melissa tonight, to hopefully speak to what might be the commission's goals, because I'm sure although there are appeals now that have been sitting in limbo for a decade or more, for other parts of this trail and near the old lighthouse location, I'm not thinking that any of the parties involved, this is just my opinion, want to see that happen again. I think there are some hopes and some goals to get this trail open. That's been the driving force, at least from our participation. And I think maybe Trevor or Melissa could build on that if I could invite you to speak.
okay, so we'll ask Melissa then to chime in, and then I'll go to public questions and comments, and then we'll come back to council.
Yeah, hello.
Go ahead.
Well, hello, everyone. Yeah, thanks for inviting me, Gabe. And I think that the city staff report is really informative, does a great job of laying out the issues and where things stand with the appeal and where we are in the process. In terms of the timing, effectively, we have a pending application from the city before us that is the appealed application. So we basically have an application that we need a little bit more information to supplement the application before we can bring it forward to a hearing. And so that's why we've been working, like Gabe was describing and Trevor's report describes, with these meetings, our government to government consultations, trying to work on getting consensus and facilitating those meetings. we're in the process of that. And before we can move forward to bring this to a hearing, we do need a little bit of information on paper from the city, like some narrative of this phased approach that Trevor was describing, a little bit more detail on the realignment option and the best route for that. And so that's kind of what we're working through. Once we have that information, we can bring this to a hearing, and it's our hope that we would permit the both the phases, what we're kind of calling the phase one, and then the intermediate phase, which is phase one is reopening the trail down to the Vista Point. The next phase would be opening it all the way to the beach along the traditional route. There's a longer term plan for, like Gabe described, the larger staircase boardwalk with the railings and that the city has reviewed in the past, that the Cherry Ancestral Society presented. So that wouldn't be the subject of our permit, but hopefully the first two phases we could permit, and we'd like to do that as soon as we can. It's definitely our goal to try to get the trail reopened in a way that is safe, that minimizes erosion and protects resources. So that's the purpose of kind of the reroute at the bottom that we've been talking about. And I'm happy to answer any questions anyone has.
I mean, I think what I'd like to do then is go to public comments and then bring it back to the council for final comments and questions, if that's okay. So any public comments or questions on the actual Lindgren Memorial Trail? That was short and sweet. I'll bring it back to the council. So I think the discussion, just want to make sure that we're everybody gets their questions answered. There's also embedded in this is a discussion about, to a degree, is about, you know, continuing down the path that we've started with the Coastal Commission that the council agreed upon. That decision that we made about the cable steps was appealed to the California Coastal Commission. It does appear, and we would not be making a decision about this tonight, but we can have future discussion, that there are some thoughts, as Bryce had pointed out, that maybe the trail could be opened as is. So I think we need some further discussion on that down the road. And then also there's, you know, could be a discussion about, does the city remove its application? So we applied for this CDP to do the cable steps. Do we either, you know, we could pull that. That would be, those are, or we continue with the process as is. I think those are the only three options. So hopefully that makes sense. So, but we're not making a decision about that tonight. Tonight's just gathering information and getting public feedback. Right? You want to add anything?
Yeah, I just thought question. Are $10,000 still on the table? Do stakeholders still want the city to put in 10,000? This or by the way, so yeah.
Good question.
I could, I'll try to answer that. And then I'll turn it over to Trevor and Melissa here to answer, but it's the council made the decision to put up the 10,000 condition on resolving this issue. That's the motion I can reference from the November meeting, which I would guess that that the city is still expected to take some first steps, yes, but there's no proposal that specifies how much. And again, we're still trying to drill down to the details so that we can then determine what those next steps are and if there are costs associated. And that's where we're honoring that spirit of consultation, which is a key component of this process. which we've been trying to have these discussions independently with your tribe and with the Trinidad Ranch Trade, for instance, which we're just now been able to schedule. So back to the amount, I think that's still on the table from this council. It never went away. But how I bring to you a consensus or a resolution is still pending. And that
Because it seems to me that if the Coastal Commission is not interested in our counter offer, we agreed to give the 10,000 with one condition. If they're not interested in that, then we should withdraw that and use that money for other trails that need repairs in the city. LMT is not the only trail in the city that needs attention.
That's true. The money's still there. It hasn't been spent. And if it gets spent before it gets reallocated, so be it. We need to use that money another place.
So I'm going to make a recommendation then, just from a process standpoint then, that this is the informational discussion and there was no ask for any decision making, but that we add an agenda item to further discuss the Axel Lindgren Memorial Trail and that we do make a decision on we revisit the 10,000, and to Bryson's point, do we want to reallocate that to other trails, or do we want to change our decision? And then also, do we want to continue down the path we're on, asking the Coastal Commission to review this plan that the council voted on to put in the cable steps, or do we want to go a different direction with that? Because the council could, I believe, withdraw its application for that CDP, but to Trevor's point, then we would need to ask for a CDP to continue closure of the trail. And we've discussed this before, how we're just going to get into a back and forth. So but I don't want to, voice my opinion early. We haven't had the discussion yet. So
because Melissa is here right now, I wonder if Melissa, if you could weigh in here with any clarifying comments.
I'm sorry, what is it that you want me to clarify?
Well, since you're here, this question of our leaving the 10,000 contribution to proceeding, but with the stipulation that
yeah, we had a stipulation and the council voted to give the $10,000, and I'm going to paraphrase. So we would assign the $10,000. Council voted 3-2, assigning the $10,000 if the Coastal Commission abandoned the appeal. Correct?
Yeah, I remember we were a little confused and not really understanding what the council's decision was, because we don't, when you say abandon the appeal, we don't have a process for that. Like I said, we have an application before us that we're processing, that we're working with the city, with your staff to process and bring forward as quickly as we can. We already had a hearing on we opened the hearing on the appeal last September or whenever that was, and found that the appeal file did raise a substantial issue. And that then transferred the permit jurisdiction to us to bring it forward. So that the action that the council took doesn't really fit in anywhere in our process in terms. So I guess I don't know if that answers your question.
Excuse me, it does in the sense of a compromise deal that everyone would come to an understanding, and we would waive any legal rights that the city had to challenge any findings anywhere along the way or seek additional review beyond the commission's final decision. So it definitely fits in. I'm just curious, have you ruled out the possibility altogether of taking the $10,000 and accepting the one condition that we tied to it? Or are you still considering that?
So we don't have any interest in the money, we're not taking money from the city. The money that my understanding is that the $10,000 that the council authorized be spent was to pay the staff and the consultants to develop plans for this phased approach that we were just talking about. To move the application forward, there's a need to do work to produce those documents, the supporting information. There's some technical, and some of this information is information that the city, that your council identified in, in its action that it took on the CDP. There's different technical studies and things like that, but you were authorizing money be spent to support your staff and consultants developing plans to basically reopen the trail. So that money isn't getting paid to the Coastal Commission or anything like that.
Thank you for clarifying that. Yes. I think I'm glad you clarified that.
Oh, it was actually the Conservancy that was interested in that piece, because then they would use that work product that we're paid for to secure the funding necessary to do the actual construction.
Or to seek funding.
Is my
So I think what I'm hearing in this discussion is that there are still a few unanswered questions on the council. I think we need to revisit the vote that was taken in light of current developments. And in order for us to make a decision, we need to agendize with the proper background. So we're not going to make any decisions, but we've uncovered some interesting information, and we will discuss it more. How does that sound?
Sounds good to me.
Okay. I think February is fine. Well, let's discuss the staff workload, but it could be February or March. I think, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I want to thank Melissa.
Yes, thanks, Melissa.
I wanted Melissa to be here because I knew there would be some questions that I would be unable to answer. Sometimes, one of the things that I've noticed over the years of having these discussions is not having the right people in the room to answer the questions can really slow things down. So I wanted to first of all just introduce Melissa for anyone who hasn't met her, but also just give you an update, because there's a lot of information in these documents that I think there's a lot more the city has done over the years to honor these agreements than there is less, right? And whether it's the 1994 trail stipulated judgment, the fact that Mr. John Frame actually helped fund and build that trail, and the Yurok tribe, remember the Yurok tribe actually built it with excellent supervision, and then all the management plan recommendations that go on, which Trevor did a nice job summarizing the recommendations that were made in the management plan, that I think I've been down that list over and over again, and I've realized how much the city has actually done to contribute. So just having this all in one place, I think is going to help us with our G2G meetings upcoming. So I thought it would be poignant to have this here on the agenda tonight. Appreciate everybody's time.
Thanks for joining us, Trevor and Melissa. Really appreciate it. And thanks everyone for the discussion. I do want to move us on to item number 3, because we have a team of folks here waiting to present. So this is the annual update from the Trinidad Community Emergency Response Team. And we have Larry Goldberg and Jeff Austin, who are co-leaders of the team. And I believe we have some slides to pull up for the presentation. Thanks for being so patient, you guys. We've had a lot to go through here. So
So just as a brief introduction, I'm Larry Goldberg, and I helped form the team initially, and this is our new co-leader, Jeff Austin, who became our co-leader about a year ago, and so together we share the responsibility of running the CERT team. So we're going to give you a little update on what we've done in the past year. So I was going to show you the update. So Jeff and I will do this together. Okay, so you see the presentation in front of you. Our motto is do the most good for the most people. So I want to start with our background. in case you might not recall. We did our basic cert training in November 2023, and Mayor Kelly was one of our first members to join us. So what's that?
As I was a trainee.
Training, yes. And we included basic first aid, basic firefighting, team organization, search and rescue, and some basic life-saving techniques. So the point I want to make is that this is a professional, skill-based program that is a 3-day intensive training that is coordinated. We use the same training materials nationwide. And many of these, we have 11 CERT teams in Humboldt County. We became the 11th, and I think there's a 12th developing now up in Neelan. So almost every town has a CERT team now. This was us when we graduated November 23. We have about 23 members registered, about 15 are still actively involved. This was the swearing in. Kelly swore us in. So we are your CERT team for the city of Trinidad, and we answer to you. So for 2025, this is our second year of having been formed. We first got together a year ago, February, and we did an activation response drill where we actually brought our trailer and all of our gear down to City Hall, and we set up in the driveway right next to City Hall and did an activation response drill. And tied with that, many of you know Richard Johnson. He is our radio expert, and he gave us radio testing and drills so that we could all become conversant in the radio technology needed to stay in touch. And by the way, with the funds you provided, like all our radios, we got a new antenna on the fire station, and we are working to get additional radio equipment because communications in an emergency is really going to be critical. And so we're working on all of those comms issues currently so that we can be talking. Obviously, one problem here in Trinidad is with the dense forests we have here, communication is very difficult with standard radios. We use both GMRS and ham radios. Ham radios do a little better, but communications in this area is difficult. And one of the things we're looking at doing in the next year is adding a repeater on the firehouse so that we can talk to at least McKinleyville, possibly Eureka, and other points, because loss of communications is predicted to be one of the first things that's going to happen in a major emergency. So this is something we're working on. Okay, and this is a little bit more showing our trailer, our setup, and everyone needs to get familiar with our equipment. As you may know, we have a trailer that was donated to us by the McKinleyville CERT team. It was purchased through a grant from Listos, which is an organization we'll speak about later, and it's completely outfitted. This trailer is in the name of the city of Trinidad, and it's completely outfitted with emergency gear. And in the last year, we've added additional gear to it as well. So we have generators, we have water, we have lights, we have everything needed to be independently available as needed. And it's stored in a secure location right now, and we can get it in very short notice. So the city has a real asset. This is probably a $20,000 trailer that's now on the city's asset list, and it's a very important thing. Okay, and then in March, we did a first aid refresher course. I'll have Jeff talk about this.
Yeah, the CERT program has a first aid component. That's one of the things I'm a CERT instructor, so I've taught the parts of the CERT class. But first aid skills are kind of perishable, if you're not using them all the time. So as part of our regular meetings, we were practicing, in this case, we're working with sand splints, basic splinting. The CERT first aid is fairly basic. I've taught first aid for I don't know, I guess a decade and a half with the National Ski Patrol in their particular program. And they have a wider scope of what they do, almost like EMT level. But so we try to review the skills so the people are familiar. And we've done that a couple of times in our business meetings. That's what it looks like.
And the fact is, we are constantly reviewing our skills and updating them. And so one of the things here is the basic training goes through the essentials, but we have to take it to the next level. And we're all year long, we're training. On the on the odd months, January, March, May, and so forth, those are our general meetings. And on the even months, February, April, June, and so forth, those are when we do 4-hour trainings. And those are more extended periods where we do training classes. So this is at a general meeting where we do a brief training. And then on the even months, we do 4-hour in-depth trainings where we're either learning new skills or refining the skills we already have. Okay, and then in April, we attended the Emergency Expo. This, many of you may have heard about this. This was held in McKinleyville, and all the first responders and local groups exhibited there, the Highway Patrol, all the police agencies, the fire departments, search and rescue, what have you. They were all there, and CERT was represented there as well. The McKinleyville CERT team was there. And we attended this, and we got a chance. This is the CERT trailer for McKinleyville. We had a chance to see how theirs is organized. They had emergency robots and all kinds of things on display. But this was a chance for us to meet other first responders around the county and get a sense of what our resources are. And the really critical thing today is for us all to be able to communicate together. So communications are really the key. And we consider ourselves second responders. We would come after the first, but in a major disaster, we might be the only folks on the ground in Trinidad. So we need to be able to communicate with these folks and work together. We made a lot of contacts there, and we're maintaining those communications together. Then we had a disaster simulation in April, and this was led by Jeff, and he'll talk to you about what we were doing. It's a program that uses a thing called Moulage. You want to talk about that?
Yeah, that's something I picked up from some of the trainings I did in the National Ski Patrol, where I have been on a Nordic ski patrol, which doesn't get a whole lot of first aid action compared to the downhill people. So we wanted to make some simulations where you had a lot of fake blood and people groaning and stuff. And we, were able to simulate a barbecue gas tank explosion. Madam Mayor had a piece of plastic and it looked like it was impaled through her hand. They were meant to be realistic in their visual appeal. So everybody was in here. They went to the scene and they didn't know what to expect. And each of them had a problem to solve. On stage, we had a simulation of a wall collapse, trapping people in the void and having to get them out from underneath it. We had the ashes all over simulating the explosion. And then we had, you can see Richard, I think he got something impaled when it fell off the roof of the town hall on top of him. So the people didn't know what they were facing when they walked out to the scene. They had to do their assessment, which is what's taught. And then they had to use the bandaging materials we had to bandage the people there. So the Moulage uses, the way I do it, the way I was trying to do it, uses kind of wax and different colors of fake blood and other little things. You can make some pretty good burns on Cheryl there with tissue paper and Vaseline. And so it does give people, and they were saying, wow, this is like first aid class, it's a little different. So I think it was a really good exercise. Everybody wants to do it again. And I think there'll be more times. We were asked to help with the paramedic class over at College of the Redwoods, I think, to pick some of those people up. So I think we will repeat that. What we did before the Moulage was to have a quick first aid refresher. And that was because people from the general public wanted, for some reason, to join us, they could do it. Now, there are some kinds of injuries like second chest wounds and femur fractures. It's not in certain curriculum. But, you know, what we did have was pretty good. And here, the middle slide showed how they had to drag a person out from under the collapsed wall and then begin treating her broken bones. So I think that was popular. And we got people from CERT teams in Arcata and Rio Del. And
the general public was invited as well. So this was open to local citizens to take part in this, and we're going to do more of this in the future. We want everyone in this area to be trained in some basic first aid and basic survival skills. So this is the kind of thing that we'd like to do more of.
Yeah, we had to put a sign out in front saying this is just real. Because the blood looked pretty real. That was my job, to try to make it
looks a lot
real as
more
possible.
person. It is kind of freaky.
But that's the whole idea, is that it's one thing to look at it in a book. It's another thing to come upon it in reality and then decide, well, what are we going to do? How do you triage this person? And there's a whole procedure for assessing the individual and then doing triage and figuring out, you know, what we're going to do with them. This could be a real life situation here. You know, there are shootings, there are fires, there are tsunamis and what have you, and we want to be prepared for whatever may come.
Joe, you were such a good sport for letting me impale you and then cover you with fireplace ashes. So it really looked like they had exploded.
Yeah, you did a great job.
It was a lot of fun, and we're going to do some more of this in the next year. Okay, so then I want to just describe our emergency trailer. This is kind of a long shot of it, but it's about 23 feet long. It's fully stocked. Now we are restocking it with new materials, but we have enough basic emergency materials to handle most, I'll just say, small scale emergencies. We have MREs in case we need some food. We have a generator. We have lights. We have first aid supplies, backboards, things like that for basic search and rescue and other activities. We'll be adding to it over time. But this is a resource that we have. And we also have all our radios in here. And we're setting up a big antenna that this will become a command station in an emergency. So we want this to be a command post if there were an emergency that we can set up and help out. And like we were saying, you know, the water emergency, we could help out with traffic, with crowd control, with any number of other activities, and we're all certified volunteers. So we are covered under the city policies. So then we had a chance to actually try out what's going on because there was a tsunami advisory. You'll all remember in July, there was a tsunami warning that occurred after a large earthquake off of Japan. And the CERT team deployed at 9:30 p.m. 6 volunteers showed up fully prepared to assist with evacuation. And that was with maybe half an hour's notice. And Cheryl and I were talking and we said, should we deploy? And said, well, we might as well at least prepare for evacuation if needed.
Just in case, yeah.
Just in case. And so this is I forgot this was on a Tuesday night, and 6 of our members showed up within half an hour. So this was a good trial run. And we,
including all 3 of our ham radios.
Yes, that's right. Our ham radio people were there, and we were prepared to evacuate the low-lying areas if needed. We were there to help the Rancheria. The Rancheria didn't need our help, but we were on board till about 11 p.m. till when they canceled.
We operated a checkpoint down the road to make sure that anybody that was going down the road actually lived there. Because, you know, we thought maybe people would say, oh, I want to see what's going on. And Rancheria did not want people down there on the beach. And so we just checkpoint.
So the thing was, there was no damage in Trinidad, but there was serious damage resulting at the Crest City Harbor. So that's the water gauge at Crest City. So the fact is, it could have been a problem. And we were prepared to do whatever needed to be done. And we were coordinating with the Rancheria. And we expect to be doing more coordination with the Rancheria in the next year. They are looking to form their own, what's called a TERT team, a Tribal Emergency Response Team. And the 2 teams will work in conjunction with each other. So ideally, we'll start doing combined exercises and learn how to work together.
One of the things to say about that little graphic there is that, if you're on a beach and, you have an earthquake that's lasting for more than a minute, you just need to get off. The county has decided not to refurbish the tsunami sirens, which were actually used anyway, I think from PG&E, and instead to push text messages. But whether you get the text message or not, if you're in the zone areas and the earthquake just keeps going and going, you just got to get yourself off quickly. And I had a conversation with Lori Dengler at one of her presentations. She's a local earthquake and tsunami expert. And she said that if the Cascadia Fault earthquake happened, the big one, Trinidad could be expected to be cut off from 2 weeks to a month. Because the low-lying areas on either side would be inundated, bridges could be out, who knows what would happen to the road around the lagoons. So, we have done some initial preliminary thoughts about, is there a way to access, I don't know what you call it, the Hammond Truck Road, the Green Diamond Road, so that supplies could be brought in and out? Longer term, could we get boats to come up to the harbor? Initially, it's too rough, but how do you get wounded people out? How do you get supplies in? That's a bigger meta issue. I mean, we would deploy and do what we could, and everybody has first aid kits and flashlights and stuff. But it would be a community-wide thing, and we would base ourselves here and do what we could to evaluate what damage has been done and what injuries we can find, and maybe even set up an aid station here.
And one thing that also comes to light here, Mayor Kelly and I have been talking about Trinidad's emergency plans. They haven't really been updated in years. Now that we have a CERT team, we should be part of your emergency plan. So we need some direction on when and how to be deployed, where we could be of use, what kinds of resources you might need. And in your emergency plan, which is pretty extensive, it's a couple hundred pages as I recall, I think we need examples of where CERT could be inserted. So this is something that we could be working on this year to revamp the emergency plan so that we have CERT as a component of your general disaster planning. So that's something for the future. Can you talk about the Listos training?
Yeah, Listos is a part of our Office of Emergency Services. I guess in Spanish it means ready. I'm not a Spanish speaker, but they had a really nice presentation, and really good dinner or lunch. And there's people from all over the county meeting each other, and they gave us some ideas about, disaster planning with the state. And then they gave us all these materials, these boxes of goodies to hold a block party. And block party was to introduce people in your community to the CERT team that you have and actually get them thinking about stuff. So that's one of the things we did this year, is use the Listos training. This was held at the Blue Lake Rancheria, and I'll have to give a shout out to Blue Lake, that they have lots of disaster preparedness activities. If you ever want to get really involved in that stuff, that's where we're going to be probably handling future CERT trainings. They did a lot of things. Personally, I spent the summer going through a program that they sponsored with an organization called greencross.org, which is disaster mental health response. So I qualified to be a field traumatologist, somebody who can go to shelters and talk to people, try to help them down. My background professionally was in adolescent psychiatry and inpatient locked units, so I have a background in mental health. So that was really interesting. So there's a lot of aspects of things that they come out of the Blue Lake trainings, and the Listos one was really pretty exciting to get involved.
And it was very well attended. There was a couple hundred people there from all over the county, and they got us started in this idea of a block party. And so this is what we organized for October. We had a community block party sponsored by the Trinidad Surf Team. And what we did is we were doing leafleting and outreach out at Murphy's Market. We were out at the art events, the what is it, that Saturday night event. And our mission, a part of our mission is public education. We really want people to know about us and to know what we do and get more people to sign up. And so we did a lot of outreach, and that led to the Trinidad Block Party in October. And this was a big success. We had about, I would say, 30 attendees on top of our people that were already there. And we had people from throughout the community. We had people come from Oric. We had people come from Big Lagoon. We had people come from McKinleyville to attend this. We really publicized it. We'll probably do this annually now. I think we're going to do this again next year. But it was very successful. And it was a chance to really explain to people what emergency preparedness is about. But it's about community preparedness. We need the community to be prepared so that we can work together as a team. And the idea here is that there are many resources that we can share. And most importantly, we need everyone to be on the same page. One of the great fears that I have is wildfire. I think that we are susceptible to wildfire. It will come here eventually. And from all the stories I read, we're just celebrating the 1-year anniversary of much of LA burning down. We need to be prepared to evacuate and or to fight fire here. We're going to need to, help people prepare. It's about preparation. So we recommend people join our team. We have a couple different options for intensive training or for hybrid training. Either way, people can join us. It's free. It's held usually once or twice a year in different communities. More likely it'll be in Blue Lake in the future. And we want to continue doing what we can for Trinidad to help expand the program.
Excellent.
Any questions?
That was a great wrap up of the year. Council, any questions for the CERT team?
Are you a state organization?
The state is involved. It's the sponsoring agency that is responsible. So in this case, it's the city of Trinidad. Some of our teams are sponsored by OES. Some of the teams are sponsored by other cities. So like Blue Lake, Arcata, Eureka all have their own teams. McKinleyville is OES. There's the Southern Humboldt team, and I don't know, I think they may be OES as well. So the sponsoring is different, but it is a statewide organization and a national organization. And in fact, it's now international. There are people from all over the world that are involved in CERT today. So the one thing that they offer is a standardized training. The focus is to standardize the training so that we all get basic firefighting, basic first aid, basic search and rescue, communications, command structure, things like that. So the idea here is that we all speak the same language and understand the same techniques.
Yeah, that's a great idea, especially with, you see some of these tsunami videos that took place in Japan, back when they had that big thing. And having a community response team like this is just great. I was there for your October block party. That was good. You guys did a really good job.
Good, thank you. Yeah, well, we appreciate the community turnout, and if the word gets out, we're going to do it again next year, and I hope we get even more people.
For those who don't know, what does OES stand for?
Well, Office of Emergency Services.
Is that a county office?
That's state.
State.
Yeah, state office. So the Office of Emergency Services is housed at the courthouse. They have an OES service through the Humboldt Sheriff's Office. So the sheriff is involved in all of this. The first responders are involved. We're trying to create a liaison with CAL FIRE. We haven't gotten very far yet, but we're trying to create a CAL FIRE relationship. We have reached out to the volunteer fire departments and to local law enforcement. So they know who we are, but we are an arm of the city. And so you are technically our boss, and then tell us when to deploy and, you know, what to do. So as I said, if you're in this water situation and needed traffic control, we could have been there. If you need assistance going door to door, we can do that.
Yeah, I've been really interested in having an escape route when we do have a tsunami, because we will be cut off in Oregon, Little River. So love to have you guys continue to work with the city to find a way to, I guess, Cornell, is it Cornell, that little area? And then it takes you up to Fieldbrook through the railroad.
Something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I haven't figured it out yet, but we're working.
Let's figure that out.
The gate, the route, and two of us went up looking for it. There is a road that comes out on the Green Diamond property at Cornell, and it goes over a bridge in the Little River too.
Yeah.
So I don't know how, it depends on how far up river the tsunami.
Right.
So it'd be worth exploring probably with Green Diamond, who owns the property. I've talked to the people at the Rancheria. They are wanting to get some boats that could be used both for the oil spills, is what he was saying, and also to be able to use to ferry supplies in or wounded people out.
Another
guys down. I went to a debriefing about CERT and the LA earthquake, and it was remarkable how different their response and involvement was compared to what we would expect. The CERT people, in many cases, would just say, you know, take care of yourself and make sure your neighbor's okay. And some people were upset, saying, well, we want to do something. And they're like, no, we'll let the fire people do that. So in the end, what was done by CERT people was basically handing out water bottles or helping the permit process, so people whose property had burned could go get the protective gear and then go up and look at it. Whereas here, it's clear that we would be cut off.
Right.
And isolated if anything big would happen. And so, you know, we're it.
Yeah. I feel like a bigger earthquake's gonna sever some lines on scenic, and we're gonna lose our water really quick.
Sure.
It would be great to have like UV filters, some type of something that you could turn on, because a lot of people live off grid with UV filters to because you're not gonna be boiling water. But yeah.
Well, there is a lot we could be preparing for.
Yeah.
The good news is most people in this area are pretty hip to it.
Yeah.
I mean, I would say we have a fairly self-reliant community. One of our challenges is how many visitors we have. One of the things that we realized when we were doing the outreach, here we were at Murphy's trying to tell people about it. And I swear 4 out of 5 people were from out of the area. They weren't local. And so when we have this many visitors, we need to inform them of what to do in case of emergency. I don't know if all the Airbnbs or other tourist-related places have some kind of notices for emergency preparation. But I would imagine that a lot of people coming from Redding or inland, they don't know anything about tsunamis. They don't know, about, that type of thing. And we would have to at least try to educate them. So
be really good to have on the Murphy's board or city hall. If there's an emergency, text this number, and then you get an auto text back, and it will keep them updated.
That's a good idea.
Good idea.
One thing
I want to fun to get any public comment, and the council is just in the interest of time. You're going to find Larry and Jeff because they're local and we're here every month. So any public comments or questions for the CERT team?
Well, what would be a number? I mean, we call Larry or
yeah.
Paul Sure.
Oh, sure.
You call Gabe or I, either Gabe or I, and legally it's probably more Gabe than me, but either one of us, and we'll connect and then we'll deploy CERT. So like if you think there's an emergency going on and maybe we haven't even thought of it yet, just call one of us or text us and we'll be like, oh yeah, we gotta call.
And this ties into the Trinidad emergency plan. There ought to be standard operating procedures for a variety of different types of emergencies. So if you have to evacuate the town, for example, we should have a procedure. If we have to shelter in place, there ought to be a procedure. I hate to say it, but if there was an incident at the school, we would have to, do crowd control. And we've done scenarios with that about terrorism. Terrorism is something that is with us, and no community is not exposed. So there are scenarios where we would help with crowd or traffic control, and we're trained in that as well.
Yeah, so I think that's one of the big reasons we have the CERT team, and it all kind of started when we had the problems with the big storms are a really common occurrence here. And so a couple of years ago, as you know, we had the big storm came through and people were without power for weeks and without water also. And so CERT kind of grew out of that. Larry reached out to me and I said, well, this would be a perfect, kind of group community involvement to get things going. And the team has done a fantastic job, as you can see, I think. So I think it's a good investment. When he comes back to the city at budget time, just try to remember Larry and Jeff's presentation.
And thank you for your support. We really appreciate it.
Thanks, you guys. Thanks very much. Right, I'm going to shift gears back to, thanks, you guys. I'm going to shift gears back to our city manager, Gabriel Adams, for the final staff report for this evening.
We follow that.
You don't have any moulage on your staff report?
Let me suggest,
Spears.
in the interest of time, I know everyone's read the stuff. So I don't think there's any need to read it to us. But
In fact, I was just gonna say, if it was 2 months, there was 2 months worth of information to share.
Really good.
But of course, in the interest of time and with what happened last week, I wasn't able to dial in, but I added as much as I thought was relevant at this time. And if we want to just speed things up right now, I'd be happy to just accept any questions.
Okay.
Or feedback, or maybe there's some things in there you want to see more of. That's all.
I think you did dial it in. I think it was a really good staff report. Very comprehensive. I read.
and some of the other agenda items.
Yeah. Read the whole thing.
By commissions.
Well, and that was something I mean, I don't know if there's going to be any blowback for including TMT notes, but frankly, I think that's something that's been missing is real updates like we discussed earlier tonight about how some of these meetings that occur, we just hear about, we don't ever hear what's happening. So I think it's going to help me, and I hope it'll help us and any less energy Pete too as well. So I just want to really shed some light on some areas of things that you might not see on a daily basis.
So do you have?
I just have some comments.
Okay. Why don't you start and we'll just go down the line.
Yeah, on page 2, apparently we got a technical assistant. We can look at our water rate structure and see if it's functioning the way we.
That's right.
Thing, touched on it earlier, but apparently January 15th is the closeout construction on the Intertie project. A couple of days from now. Do you know if things is anticipated that deadline would?
Yeah, so the deadline that we're looking at is construction, but the actual grant, Angela, maybe you can help me with this, is it, we're gonna close our part out by March 15th, is that correct?
So March 31st is the last day, but I'll make everything wrapped up in these 2 weeks.
So we need construction to be done in time for all the invoicing, anything else that might come up, punch lists, that we can then follow up on, and then we have a whole list of items to prepare to close out the grant in total. So this week we're anticipating that fingers crossed that everything's looking pretty good over there right now.
We have a site visit tomorrow.
Oh, that's right.
We're close out the one grant for the Edward Street improvements. Now we're waiting for our $630,000
That's right.
Reimbursement.
$636,000 from the state. I think we touched on this back in October or September when we talked about the crosswalks, and we didn't want to do anything until we closed out the grant. The grant's been closed out on our end. We've passed everything over to the state, Caltrans. And Caltrans is reviewing all the documents, and hopefully we'll get a reimbursement check soon.
Yeah. Get a check clears.
We use this.
Yeah, that's all I enjoyed the report, very informative.
Okay, Katie's passing, Jack, Don. I just have one quick question. Outside of the building, it's looking really good. Windows look great. And I see that they're starting the painting. Do they have an ETA for like finishing yet, or? I know weather.
It is weather, and then there's also been some questions of whether this side of the building is actually going to dry enough.
Okay.
So he might have to deploy some techniques, for warming, heating, that side of the building and get the proper dryness.
Well, I'm excited to see the progress. So,
yeah, there's so much going on. There's so much going on. I think, part of a city manager's success is how smooth, the council feels things are operating. But then when you realize what's going on in the background, I think there's so much to share, so much we get excited for, so much I get excited for on a daily basis. But no news is good news. But at the same time, I want you to be aware. And there's some more things too coming up. Like one thing I'll just throw out right now is Underwood. We're gonna do a service connection on Underwood on Thursday to a property about Midway. And I added to this meeting packet. We're also gonna do some hand notifications tomorrow with water and everything everyone's been sensitive to. They turn on a faucet, it doesn't work. They're gonna be very paranoid right now. So we just wanted to be very upfront. We're gonna notify the residents of Underwood. I think it's about 25 customers, that their water may be interrupted. And I think a lot of it has to do with techniques when you can hot tap to put a service connection to a property with a vacant parcel. It's actually, it's not one of the ones at the end of the street. It's much closer, believe it or not. It's kind of across street from Carrie Varela's. Right.
The garage that never got developed.
Yeah. So that place is owned by a resident, and they've asked about a couple of months ago for a service connection. They're paying for it. Just getting around to doing it. So we learned the hard way last week. Hooven surprised us up on Berry Road, and they the morning after, I think I think it was a couple of days after our water crisis. Was it Monday? Oh, it was Monday. They just showed up to work and were like, we don't want you hitting any lines right now. We don't have any water deliveries. And they're like, oh, we're not gonna hit any lines. And then of course they hit a line. So typically we notify people in advance, like there's gonna be construction and there may be an interruption in service. That's what we're gonna do for Underwood tomorrow. So Jack, you'll get a notice. John, you'll get a notice. And hopefully it'll be uneventful. But if there is an interruption, it would just be very minor. Just a few hours, if that.
Let me also ask if there are any members of the public who have any questions about Gabe's staff report. Okay, I see no comments or questions from the public.
Now that we've incurred some unexpected expenses relative to the water emergency, assuming those are going to come out of our general fund reserves.
Water fund. This is going to come from the water fund. I think we've made some great strides in saving money this year from the water fund, from eliminating our consultant.
I guess we have if we
and also the city manager's salary, which currently is not being expended. A significant portion of that comes from the water fund.
Okay.
So there will be a savings in the water fund, but I'm really hoping we can get this technical assistance project rolling this month. It's supposed to happen this month. And then I'll ask Samantha and I will really drill down and see how this might, where we're at as of today. And then how some of the changes that we've made this year have affected the bottom line in our water fund. I mean, by no means were we putting away money.
Right.
We're putting a lot away, but there are new rates and they did stabilize our rates, our system, at least as of October 24th when they were implemented. That was the idea, that was the design. So I think there's ways for us to be happy that we saved that money, but of course, this is a rainy day that we're gonna be hoping for.
Future agenda items. I heard tonight we wanted to talk about Axel Lingwood Memorial Trail, AKA the city's new slip and slide. Just kidding. And we wanted to talk about Humboldt Bay Municipal Water District. So the water plan, the comparison plan, I think that's scheduled for March. There was something else. You guys, was there something else?
The STR lottery.
The what? Okay, yeah, I'll think about it. I'll send.
I get undermined into that mode. We have our executive.
Yeah, that sounds good. Yeah, it'll come to me later. Okay.
We have an STR lottery. We have a.
Yeah, the SCR lottery.
Okay, you've been thinking.
Yeah, and there was something else that came up tonight, but I'll think of it later. Okay, with that, I think we're adjourned. Thank you.